Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to continue to take a look at the scenario where Rome and the Dutch Empire allied after World War III. In the last episode we saw the start of World War IV, and we saw that Libya blew up some Greek equipment and Greek ships, and Greece was in the square, so Rome declared war. And now the parallelograms join the war and all of Rome allies, and let's just get into it. So we're starting over here where we see a stalemate. Yup, stalemate guys, nothing happens because the Greek navy was actually mobilized and they're kind of stopping the Libyan forces, so no one can really do something. Where stuff happens is over here though. We see Morocco going in and with help from Libya almost kicking the Romans out of Africa. They managed to hold out in Carthage though, and this will be pretty hard hither. This might help. The squares need absolutely this to happen. Also see that Gold Ethiopia is planning offensives against the old empire. Speaking about the old empire, we see that this Israelistine area gets conquered pretty quickly because the old empire had troops stationed there, and Libya was kind of focused elsewhere, so they managed to. We also see this country getting rolled over, and the Ethiopians aren't that bad because they're actually cooking in Yemen. They're actually going pretty far. We also see them making a small landing over here, but it will probably get pushed back. This is just the start. Now let's go over here because we also see Galicia, Catalonia, and France. They joined, and Andalusia is kind of fascist now. But what does happen here? So we see that Catalonia is actually doing pretty okay. And they managed to stalemate the front and take some provinces. Meanwhile, Galicia is actually doing pretty good. And they're doing good because they're getting all tons of aid, and also Morocco needed to. They're focusing on Africa. Basically, the Africans are focusing on Africa, and this is the reason Galicia is doing so well. So eventually they get stopped though, and the war goes on stalemate. Oh yeah, this really fun front. How is it going for Russia? So we see Polish forces immediately storming into the front line and they fight fascist Russia, which is pretty powerful. But Poland is stronger. Yes. We also see this slight country getting rolled over by a combined effort, and really only the province close to Russia managed to survive. So is it that the Polish are actually cooking? The reason they're cooking is because they expected a war with Russia. And we also see Estonia helping. We see we see Finland staging the Baltic coast and completely taking it. It's not an occupation forces good color, but we need to keep this. So we see that Russia is not doing so well. But they can still do something. Let's go over here to Caspia. So we see that, oh, the Red Caucasians are getting jumped. That's not tough. Really, the Caucasians are getting jumped, which is not. So we see them absolutely going pretty fast, going here through the mountains. They're having some trouble though. They're fighting also with the pink team over here, Pink Kazakhstan, which is holding on. These fronts are kind of stalemated, and here is actually the only front where Russia is winning on, because yeah, they're, they had troops there, they're doing ruling that front. Korea is mostly giving out support, but now we see that some countries are starting to retaliate during the war. Hibernia is joining the war on the side of the square. Scotland is. Basically, most of the last is starting to retaliate against the fascist powers. Crete is thinking about joining, so seeing stuff happening. Orange Afghanistan, the country with most aura, they are joining against the fascists. We see also Tibet, and this kind of issues a big power at its time. We also see Vietnam having, if they were fascist, they're having a coup now, they're staying neutral for now. But China is having some issues. China insists that Korea is a threat and that it must be destroyed. Days later, there is the official declaration of war. China joins the war on the side of the squares. And also Siphon Siberia does, because they're kind of allied with China. So they do, to retake some land. Now, how does the war go? The answer is kind of stalemated because we see here China kind of winning. Chinese Navy is kind of better than the Koreans, and they kind of are all over the place. Meanwhile, the Koreans are kind of stuck in one area. But Korea expected this, so we see that Korean troops are actually doing well in this part, and they are destroying China. Like they destroy them. They didn't expect Siphon Siberia to join because the defensive pact was so secret. And Korea didn't know that, and believe it or not, but Siphon Siberia is winning against Korea because they had no troops there, basically. They've saved only one small area, but Korea is actually kind of incompetent, despite them being large. We also see some revolt because the country is unstable. The fascist regime kind of stopped that, but there is some small revolt still. So it's not the best country to live in. The Chinese, though, take notice of this and they have huge losses, but they manage to kind of go and also take some on the front. It's not going that well. Vietnam is kind of neutral, as I said. In Bangladesh, yeah, they were in the parallelograms. Yeah, I just said Vietnam was neutral, but they're still jumping Bangladesh. So the Vietnamese are absolutely destroying Bangladesh. They are strong because the fascist regime was okay, but Vietnam is way just stronger. Vietnam is just more tough, strong. India is not doing much because they're kind of focused elsewhere, but they are definitely doing stuff. We also see Tibet. I will not give an occupation force to them, but they're doing well. Even though they're fighting against other fronts too, so it's not going. But Bangladesh, instead of fighting for their life, they just decide to surrender. And Vietnam is not technical in the war on the side of the square, so they will make a separate peace deal and they will annex basically everything they occupied. And also Tibet will annex these lands. Only India will keep occupation, so yeah. Vietnam is becoming bigger. Vietnam is becoming bigger. But now with Bangladesh gone, India's kind of have other fronts to go on. Meanwhile, the old empire is kind of having trouble. They managed to push back the gold Ethiopians, and they also kind of do win against Caspia because there's some anti-Caspian sentiment here. So there were some Caucasian. So thanks to the old Empyreans, thanks to the old Empyrean, Caucasia is saving themselves, and also to some aid which is coming from Farmera. The battle Mediterranean is going okay, I guess. The Roman navy is pretty good. Moroccan navy is also. Libyan navy is good, but the Greek navy is better. So eventually we see that Greece liberates this and Crete finally decides to join the war. And they liberate their land. So so the front is kind of changing in the Mediterranean. And also that the other three Anatolian countries they join on the side of the squares because they're kind of tired. We also see this blue country joining, sending aid. But the front of the century is happening because these guys are fighting each other. And India is kind of stronger than Persia. Persia didn't really have all of the time to properly develop themselves. The old Imperians are doing pretty well, and Persia actually tried to develop themselves, but didn't do that good. Caspia basically saves them, and this is the reason the front got stalemated, otherwise they will get jumped. How is Orange Afghanistan going? They're absolutely cooking Caspia, of course. The MVP Weeks of World War 3 is still doing good. And not only that, Tibet is now liberating this brown country and the people. Not only that, we also see the gold Mongolian country joining in the squares, becoming a big gangbang. And with this, kind of these faraway areas from the capital gets conquered, but the nationalist sentiment kind of saving Caspia, which is going all in against the pink team. The pink team is kind of having trouble. Thanks to some aid, they survive, but they're having lots of trouble. Russia is winning on this front too. But then they have to stop because there is this European front in which they still aren't locking in. The Polish somehow are doing absolutely wonderful, and basically everyone are giving aid to Poland, which is unstoppable at this point, and the Russian fascist government is kind of crumbling. Basically, all of Northern Europe is helping Poland, and it won't go well for the Russians, not at all. We also see the Finnish keep resisting over here, and they are absolutely cooking. So we see this happening, And the Russian leader at this point is kind of disliked, but is still good. Okay, somehow. Did they retreat from the pink team? Caspia occupies this. Even though Caspia is having some trouble, they still do occupy this, and they kind of still do well because they're, even though in these faraway areas are doing pretty bad. But now let's head over to the Americas where there is some fighting going on. Well, not really. The only fighting is between Carolina, Mexico, Texas, and the terrorist state. The terrorist state is getting jumped, and we see that Texas, with some aid, is able to do stuff. Yeah, they're cooked. Absolutely cooked. And it's not going well. At this point, they just surrender. They just surrender. They aren't even that much fascist. They joined in because they thought it could be a good opportunity, but they were just a distraction. And they got jumped. But they surrender, so they always still exist. And now the South American fascist bloc is going to fight on against the communist. South America joins in. The African front is kind of heating up because South Africa is waiting to join the war, and it might happen. So we see that in this front we see Morocco trying to fight with the Roman Navy, which is actually planning a naval operation. They can do it. And they kind of save themselves. We see the Roman Navy is still trying to beat up Morocco. They make a distraction naval landing, which does distract, which makes this completely retreat. Delusion just has this area, but now we see still the delusion switching sides happen. And now we get a democratic government, and we see Catalonia just annexing this since Andalusia is now good, so we see Catalonia directly annexing this. Not going that well. But now we see that South African bloc finally decides to join against the parallelograms, and this is changing everything. The Africans are now getting distracted even more. And you also see the old Imperial Navy absolutely destroying Libya. Like we see them absolutely doing naval operation here. And it is thanks to the old empire if Crete is finally free once again. With Crete free now, and it's not going that well now, as the old empire is pushing back. Persian is kind of resisting, but Orange Afghanistan, massive war, and all the Tibetan help is still going well, and Caspia is lots of fronts to fight on. So we see Caucasia still freeing themselves, and Russia getting pushed back, which means he's not going to go home because so we see this happen. This point is not going that way. And this point, the pink team is not even fighting. They're The Russian front is kind of free. We actually see more country joining in. See that the brown Siberian country joins to gain just some land. They join the squares and they just chill. But this issues Russia. They're getting cooked, but like absolutely cooked. They're up against kind of full of Europe, and fighting seems pointless. Russia surrendering can happen though. You will betray your allies, but the Russian leader doesn't care. Russia surrenders for the good of their people. If Russia didn't surrender, their country will get fully destroyed. But now they surrendered, so weird things might happen. With the Russian front over, Caspia is now going to crumble pretty quickly. And now the empire is not sending aid more. South America, though, nothing changes in South America. The Brazil just destroys Peru, and this front can just be speedrun upon because the communist nations aren't winning this. This dark red country gets quickly jumped, and also the red Chileans get kind of bad situation. They don't surrender yet. We see Patagonia joining in. But at this point, South America, Brazil is kind of losing faith in the other fascist bloc and is thinking about pulling out of the war. But no, let's head over to Asia, where China is still doing okay against Korea. Chinese Navy was actually kind of prepared and they had the time to recover. The Korean Navy gets defeated in the Shandong area. This does not spark defeat, but we see that some more rebellious groups will try and revolt. For example, we see over here Japanese rebellion happening. I know this is crazy, but see Japanese rebellion happening, and these kinds of sparks defeat for Korea because